like to introduce Jack and Jen Waters. Jen is a local author who has written a book called The Purple Orchid List, which she's also written into a play, one of the chapters into a play. And that's what we're here to talk about, the Purple Orchid List. Jack, Jen, tell us why it's called the Purple Orchid List, or how you came up with the name.
Actually, I came up with it. It's kind of funny. I'm a very, very small part of this fantastic story that she's got, and
But you're the best part.
I like to think so. But through chance or through coincidence or serendipity or whatever it may be, she had a list of things that somebody's had to say, do, or be, and me being from, about 2,000 miles away, managed to meet her online and managed to come up with these 11 things, and it kind of just seemed like it was meant to be. Like if I was to just go ahead and bring her purple orchids on Tuesday the 17th, then it was meant to be, and she agreed. So hence the name Purple Orchid now.
And that truly is what he said when I confessed to him and told him about my list. Jack is hubby number 4. I've been married 3 times before, and after I went through that 3rd divorce, I decided that in order to get married again, that I had to create this impossible list of just never going to happen. I did not want to get married again. I did not want a serious relationship. So I created this ridiculously impossible list that my next husband had to say, do, and be. And when when he was said and did it all, when I confessed to him that this list existed, when I confessed to him that he was it, his words were, so what you're telling me is,
If I bring you purple, purple orchids on Tuesday.
Right, if I sent you purple orchids on Tuesday the 17th, I would be it. Yeah, pretty much. And I sent you purple orchids on Tuesday the 17th. Yes, you did. So that's how it...
Yeah, you're going to leave out my next comment.
Oh, I got to meet you.
No, you're crazy.
And then I got to meet you.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite lines in the entire play, which was a fun thing to do. So when you first met each other, because you had this long-distance relationship for quite some time before you actually did meet, we're not going to go into all that. They're going to have to read the book or see the play to find out exactly what happened that day you met. But when you got off the plane, what did you think? You had never seen her. You'd seen pictures.
Yeah, I mean...
Fuzzy pictures.
Well, no, you sent me a couple by that point in time. I mean, we'd been conversing for a while now. So, I didn't have enough time to think anything, really. Because I got a set of keys thrown at me, and we were moving because there was something else going on. I don't know how much you want me to divulge about it, so...
A missing child who wasn't really missing.
Right.
Oh, there we go, yeah.
Okay, how's that?
There you go. So, and I had to drive 90 miles to get here, and there you go, the first day that I moved out here, and I had no idea. Well, anyway, so, yeah, I didn't have a lot of time to think of anything.
Well, it's interesting because I just want you to divulge just one of the things on the Purple Orchid List, perhaps the first one, because that one is sort of cute. I mean, you're 41 years old? Or,
I will be 40.
Okay, but when this happened?
When this happened, I would have been in my early 30s. But he had to be over, well, whoever had to be over 6'5".
That's pretty impossible. Being 5'9", I know how impossible 6'5" is.
Right. But 6'5", because I would never meet anybody 6'5" or over 6'5".
How tall are you?
I'm 6'7".
That was number 1.
Yep.
And the list goes on from there. The Purple Orchid List, the play, is just one chapter, and it's very funny, and it was very much fun to do. And what most people don't know, and very few people who saw the play know, is that that's just a small part of the entire story. And let's go back a little bit and talk about why the book was so important for you to write. Because writing for you is very therapeutic.
It's very cathartic. I've always been I've always been journaling, doing my journaling, poetry, all kinds, just writing. Writing has always been my therapy. And when you go through the 3 marriages that I went through, and the relationships that I went through, and start way back at the beginning, and which is where I start the book, when I was a kid, when you go through everything I went through, writing was just the perfect outlet for me to just get it out. In writing the book, I realized how functionally dysfunctional I was, how it's like for so many years, I liken it to a pebble being washed up on a shore. It just really cannot, it can't possibly fight that giant wave that's tossing it around, but it manages to get through. And that's basically what my life has been to this point.
I'd like you to share just a small amount of what happened when you were little that sort of led to the relationships you had later, and that it culminated with the great relationship you happen to have with Jack. The reason I want you to talk about this is because there are people who are going to be watching this who've been in your situation. And they need to know that even someone as strong as you are, and as I said, I've known you since you were very little, you are one of the strongest women that I know. Even you struggle with things, and we'll get to that a little bit later. Let's talk about what happened when you were 11.
When I was 11 years old, my sister, my older sister, was about 4.5 years older than I was, and our house was teenage central. We had teenagers coming and going in and out of our house all the time, and my parents, my mom she reveled in that. She loved being the mother of the popular girl that had all these friends, and bad one got in. He was actually a boyfriend of my sister's, and he molested me as a kid. Horrific molestation. It wasn't just the acts that he did, but it was the psychological abuse. He had me convinced that I would die. He had me convinced that when I died, my parents, nobody would really care. At 11 years old, you have an 11-year-old girl who has her funeral planned. I mean, that's not right. I knew I had pink roses at my funeral. And it's the psychological trauma that he caused was just unbelievable.
And yet you came through it. As I said, very strongly. You got married when you were 18. The first time.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, when I got married at 18, it wasn't something that I necessarily wanted to do. I wasn't at a point, I didn't want to get married, but my mom thought that I needed to get married. And, and I'm just on the heels of this major psychological trauma caused by my molester, caused by my predator. He had me convinced that my mom wanted to get rid of me. So when this whole marriage thing came up, and when I was asked to get married, when he proposed and the whole engagement and everything, and my mom having the business, being in the business that she was in, she got caught up.
She's a florist.
Yes, she was, and she had a photo studio, and she was amazingly talented. I mean, it was incredible what she did, but she got caught up in that, and I don't think I, at that point, was loud enough. I couldn't make myself be heard. When I told her that I just couldn't go through with it, I think she heard, oh, she's got jitters. So I found myself at 18 married and moved across the country to Virginia with my first husband, who really had no interest in having a wife at that point. He was also very young. He thought that's what he wanted, but he was too busy out running around and having his life, which now has put me in a position where I feel, again, completely unwanted, unloved, what have you, and so then I go out searching for it. And it just, you get on this merry-go-round of bad relationships.
And yet, through it all, you ended up being an incredibly successful woman at the age of 19, 20, 21. You ended up in the car business doing things that most women don't ever do.
No, and how did that happen?
Because you're strong.
There's a strength there, definitely. From where it came from, I'm not really sure. But no, yeah, I did. I was in the car business. Working as a customer relations manager, delivery coordinator, aftermarket sales rep.
For a whole region at the age of?
That was later. That was after I'd moved back from the East Coast and then out to the West Coast, yes. There was a company that had put me in, had offered me the Western region to set dealerships up in Memphis. So me and my business partner, aka roommate, packed our bags and took off.
And you were how old?
At that point, I was 22.
22.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
9 states. I did 9 states.
At 22.
At 22.
Okay. And yet you still have relationship issues.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about number 2.
After the car business, I burnt out. I was 22, 23 years old, and I was working nonstop. The business wasn't going. It had reached a point, my business partner, things just weren't going like they should have been, and I left. I left that area. I left out west. I moved back to North Dakota. I decided at that point I just wanted to move to the smallest town I could find. I wanted to be the person that the blue-haired ladies talked about. So I moved back to North Dakota to a really small town. I met who would be my second husband. He'd been through divorce before. He had a child. I didn't have kids at that point. But he understood. He understood. He understood how tragic and how devastating divorce is. And we met, and I ended up pregnant with my oldest son, and we got married, and it was an absolute horrific nightmare. He was extremely abusive, both mentally, physically. When I was 4 months pregnant with my second son, that Jacob ended up passing away. When I was 4 months pregnant with him, he came home and told me he'd been having an affair, and he didn't know how he felt about that woman. But he knew he didn't love me the way I think he should. So, what do you do? What choice do you have?
How long did that marriage last?
Oh, we were married about 2.5, 3 years.
Okay, first marriage was a year. Now your second marriage was 2.5, 3 years, and that you had a period of time.
Yep.
You ended up getting divorced again.
Mm-hmm.
Now what?
And I met hubby number 3. And at this point, you have people, you have that inner voice in your head. You have that voice saying, come on, seriously. That they call, he referred it to the duality of man. You have, your inner conscience or whatever. In the book, I call her myself because she does have a very strong voice. And myself was always talking to me. Myself was telling me in the back of my mind, Jen, seriously, you've been divorced twice. You've got one son, you just lost a child. You're never going to be able to have any more kids. Who's going to want to do with that? You need to take it first. He wants you. You need to settle. And I did. I settled, and I settled for my third husband. He was a very kind, very gentle, knight in shining armor, so to speak. He came raging in during just the worst time of my life with hubby number 2, and basically saved me, swooped me up, and carried me out of there. And I didn't know him, and I had no clue who he was. Barely had spoken 2 words to him, and he gave me his house. I mean, who does that? And
Hubby number 3.
Hubby number 3, yes, he did. He gave me his house.
But what didn't you know about him?
There was a lot of mental illness there. And it wasn't just mental illness. He was lying. There was a lot of deception there. 6 years later, 6 years into our relationship, 3 years, almost 4 years after our marriage, after we'd gotten married, one more son later, I find out that everything was a lie. Everything was a lie. And when he realized that I knew that, and I'm not going to go into too much about what he lied about, read the book. When he realized that I knew the truth, he just looked at me and said, and to think you weren't even worth it. You know, so here I am again. You know, going through it. But I want to make one thing clear. He left me. He said that. He left me literally the week before Christmas. It was December 17th. I had a brand new business.
Two little boys. I had no predictable income. I had no way to pay my rent. I had no way to make my car payments. But I never felt so free, and I never felt so happy in all my life. I was thrilled when he walked up. I tried to cry. I tried. I got one tear, but that was about all I could. That's all I could muster. And I don't think it was necessarily thrilled because my marriage to him was over, but I was thrilled because I was free. I finally felt free. I broke through all of this, and I was free. And that's when I said, I will get married again. Because if you say you will get married again, you
I won't.
And that's how the play, The Purple Orchid List, starts. With this unbelievable thing that happened with you and Jack.
Yes. No, it was one thing I had never done, because if you know, following this and breezing through the 3 marriages like this, I'd never dated before. I had never been on a date where somebody showed up at my door, picked me up, took me on a date, took me out for dinner. I'd never done that before. So that was my whole purpose. I made the list and I decided I was going to start dating. So I started going on really horrible dates that were actually fun.
And that's one of the things that was so much fun about the play and doing the play with you, was the fact that you sit around at rehearsal saying, and what was your worst date ever? But you kept winning. I did. You did keep winning. You had some doozies.
Yeah, the play even had my worst date ever.
It did have your worst date in it. Exactly. So one of the things that's in there, and that I really like, is the pizza box story. So Jack, would you please tell us about the pizza box?
So it was
It's one of the questions.
Yes, it was one of the questions on the list. There was if she sent me out to go pick up some pizza for dinner that night. It was just she and I, no kids obviously. And when I came home, she greeted me at the door, basically stark naked or in some lingerie or something. What do I do with the pizza?
Now wait, we had this discussion at play practice, and what did all the guys say?
Oh, I set the pizza box down.
Or, I'll go put it in the oven.
Yeah.
That was my favorite, yes. And Jack, what was your answer?
Without hesitation, I would chuck it like a Frisbee.
And Jen, what was the answer that you were looking for?
He would chuck it like a Frisbee. It was, you know, when you ask that question to them, most of them will say, oh, I set the pizza box down, or I set the pizza down. And what? You know, they don't understand why you're asking this question. The right answer is, what pizza? Throw it, you know. It doesn't matter what I would do with it. And that's what I was looking for.
And he managed to pull that up. One real quick thing that I want to get to, because it goes to the point of how strong you are and yet how vulnerable you still are. And I think that's important for people to understand that even strong women can be very vulnerable. We talk about all the coincidences and how you ended up with Jack, but there was one more coincidence that happened very recently. And that was when we were getting ready to do this interview, about a week before we did the interview, something else happened. And it had to do with your abuser. Would you be willing to talk about that?
The molester in the beginning, the predator from when I was 11, he had spent the last 20 plus years locked up.
And why was that?
He molested after me. There were other victims. Probably the same time he was victimizing me, there were other victims. He molested a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old little girl.
Over 4 years.
Yeah. Threatened to kill them and family members if he told, or if they told. He was convicted of that, sent to prison. Got out and raped a 16-year-old girl. And at that point, they locked him up and they deemed him a level 3 sex offender. He's criminally dangerous.
But for the first conviction, he only got 4 years. Is that correct?
I think so.
For molesting the 3-year-old and the 6-year-old over a 4-year period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Then he came out and raped someone,
Mm-hmm.
and he went back into prison as a level 3.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And they assured me, you know, he never went to prison for anything he'd ever done to me. I had never pressed charges. I didn't tell anybody until I was 16. But when he got out, I mean, he's a level 3 sex offender.
Turned violent, if anyone wants to go to the North Dakota website and see. Yes.
Right. They let him out. They put him in transition, which means that he will be getting out. He will be walking the streets. I had made friends with people that worked there, and I was assured he would never get out, that he would never see the light of day. He was civilly committed. And when they're civilly committed like that, they are held indefinitely. And he is out.
The day that you found out, Jack, you found out before Jen did.
Mm-hmm.
And how did that make you feel?
Oh, well, judging by how her mother pointed it out in the newspaper and then ran out of the house, I was a little apprehensive. But she didn't want to be there when I went to Jen. I always figured, okay, well, I don't need to sugarcoat it, so she got up with her client, and I showed her the picture in the paper without hesitation, and that was a difficult day. She tried to keep it together. She wasn't going to cancel her clients until I insisted that she do so. And so I canceled all her clients, and I poured her a glass of wine and just sat there with her, and she didn't have much to say. Just sat there, and you could tell she was kind of broken up, and yeah, it was a rough day.
Did your reaction surprise you? It surprised all of us, but did it surprise you too?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I thought I was a lot further along than what I was, but I think my new favorite quote right now is, "It's easy to talk the tiger when it's behind the cage." You know, it was really easy for me to be strong, and really easy for me to hold my head up and know that I am perfectly fine, because he was locked up, and when they let him out, it was like, oh, you know, I felt deflated, I felt defeated, I felt like, you know.
To put this in perspective, how old is your youngest son?
11 years old, he's my age. You know, and that was one of the things that they, when I called, because I called the state's attorney that day, I called everybody. You know, how can you let him out? You got to rethink this. This is not right. I was told by one person that, well, Jennifer, that was a long time ago. You don't look the same. You're right, I don't look the same. But my 11-year-old son looks exactly like I do when I was 11. And I guarantee you that when I run into him in the grocery store with my 11-year-old son, he's going to know exactly who that is. He is going to know exactly who I am.
Because it's interesting, after he was incarcerated, he admitted to not just the abuse that he did to the ones he was convicted for, but he admitted to many others, both boys and girls.
Boys and girls, various ages, it doesn't matter. He does not have, like, you cannot say, lock up your daughters. You can't say, your teenage daughters, you know, be weary of this. You can't, there is no age. He doesn't discriminate on age, or, you know, it doesn't matter. Age, sex, it doesn't matter. Boys, girls, it doesn't matter to him. And he's out.
But that's been several weeks now, and you are coping with it. It's not easy every day, but
Well, especially after he went back in and then
got out again.
after she was thinking that, okay, he's in for another extended period of time, which turned out to be a total of a week and a half.
Not even. It was about a week. It was about a week. He got put back because I stepped up, because I went in and filed my police report, and I am trying, we filed. And
Because in North Dakota, there is no statute on this.
there's no statute of limitations. It's 3 days from the day you report it. So it happened, 30 years ago. Not that I want to admit about that. But it happened 30 years ago. There's no statute of limitations on that. It's 3 years from the date that I filed the report, so 3 years from this July 3rd. That is how long we have to press charges against him.
Okay.
So,
But in the long run, Jack's here. You have a wonderful play. You have a terrific book.